Hello, everyone. Hopefully, everyone can hear me and see my sharing screen. Welcome and thank you for joining us on another BEXEL Manager webinar. My name is Mileta Pejovic and I'm BIM Manager at BEXEL Consulting. So today I'm going to talk about our unique BIM software solution, BEXEL Manager. Our BIM platform is unique and it integrates all BIM dimensions into one. So today in a real-time model presentation, I'll try to show you some very useful software features and BIM uses that can be implemented throughout the entire project lifecycle. For a short time since BEXEL Manager is publicly released on the market, many companies and professionals found us reliable and our solution really useful for their project management needs. So we believe that the reason for all this is our full commitment to development of advanced software features according to the real needs from the users on real case projects. Today, our customers are many companies and professionals around the globe. I also have to underline that we are fully committed to development of our software in compliance to open BIM interoperability standards, and BEXEL Manager is officially IFC certified by Building Smart International Organization, so we widely cooperate with other partners with similar vision, such as BIM Collab and other companies. In this webinar, I'll briefly show you how we integrate BCF files and how we can collaborate with other project members working on different authoring tools such as ArchiCAD, Revit, Tekla, or any other. Our company is also fully involved in research and development processes of BIM and BIM industry standards. So we're also a member of Stanford University and a member of Building Smart Internationals. And we're constantly updating our knowledge and our features in our platform. Now I'll introduce you with the BEXEL Manager, which you hopefully see it on your screens. When you open BEXEL Manager, this is the main user interface as you see it. And in the center of your screen is a 3D view. You can see this model open in the 3D view. And currently I'm working on a demo model which comes with your software installation. If you couldn't find this demo model, this one is actually installed when you install the software on a common location, and it's probably on your computer somewhere here in a program files. So hopefully it's installed on C program files in BEXEL Manager samples, sample project, and this is the extension of our open project, BSLM. So you can open it and try to do it by yourself on your computer so you can follow what I'm gonna talk you today. On the upper part of the screen, you'll see the ribbon bars with the main tabs. And during this webinar, you'll be more informed about the functionalities of more or less each of these tools. On the left side of the screen, you see BEXEL Manager Explorer window, a window where you can explore the different breakdown of the elements inside your model. And by default, you see three main tabs. It's Building Explorer, Selection Set, and Custom Breakdowns. Building Explorer is actually exploring window where you can see system-based breakdown of model elements, and all these currently visible breakdown are actually system-based, and these came from the authoring tool. In this case, the Revit model the model came from Revit, so you see the standardized categories from Revit models. And if you expand any of these, you see the family and family types for these categories. So it's really, really useful, and easy to access and select any of these elements in your model. So while we selecting these expanded categories or families, the selection is actually applied to the model. So you see these are selected elements. Okay, the first, let's say, breakdown structure, which is system base, is elements and their categories. The next one is a spatial structure, where you can see the breakdown of your elements according to the elevation, or actually the level of each element. So if we select this one structure here, you see the selection is also applied in the model elements at the same time, simultaneously. So it's really convenient for additional grouping of your elements according to the needs of your project. The next breakdown is a system-based, and it actually breaks down your elements according to the systems. If you have a MEP model, which we have in this case, all the elements are break down in the structure of these systems existing in the model. So I can select any of these and show you. You see only selected systems and the elements that actually are in these systems. Also, I can show you a little tip. If you press double C, actually CC on your computer keyboard, you see the shortcut explanation, so you can use these shortcuts while you perform model analysis. Okay. And the last breakdown structure, which is system-based, is work set structure. And this one, we found this one really, really convenient, since we usually working with Revit models. And this breakdown automatically breaks down your elements according to the work set that actually are created within the Revit model. And if you expand any of these, you also see the categories and then the family names. So you can really easily select and access any of the elements that you know where you created in your Revit model according to the work set. Okay. So while I've been showing this Building Explorer windows and the functionalities, I also try to isolate all these model elements which I've selected, and these are actually some functionalities of a 3D view and view screen. And another tool which actually affects all these functionalities are visibility tool, and you can access this tool by right-clicking on your mouse. And you see basic tools for visibility and the color control of your elements in the model. So for example, if I select any of the elements in the model, with a right click, I can isolate these elements. I can undo my visibility change, or my what I actually try to do. You can also change the color for any selected elements or the unselected elements as well. I can show you this as well. These are actually the simple and basic functionalities for changing the appearance of your 3D model, which came from the authoring tool. You can also change the opacity of any of these elements and the way of their appearance by changing the type, which can be shaded or wireframe, shaded with edges, any of these. So you see this one is here. And if we change opacity. You see the transparency of these elements is changed, you see. And when we're talking about these visibility tools and features, actually another one that actually affects overall appearance and look of your model is textures. And here we have a texture editor as well. And this one is here. So when you click on a texture editor, you open the texture editor which contains all imported textures in the model. So if you want to make a model more realistic and visually appealing, you can use these textures or any texture on your machine. So you can import it right here. And for example, if you have some pictures, you can import. Okay, this one is BAM. The textures have to be rectangular. So in order to import textures, they have to be rectangular. And when you import any of these textures, you can apply these textures for selected elements. And this is another convenient solution for presentation purposes of your model. So here you see a textured model. And also this tool have a ability to automatically texture all elements according to predefined texture rules. So here you see the predefined rules and the explanation how these apply to any of these elements. So according to the category, family, material, or any other property, you can use specific texture, and you can also apply different tile mappings for these textures and apply these automatically for all elements. This is just another convenient solution for texturing of your model. Also, when we're talking about actually the model, entire process of any B model analysis starts with actually a Turing tool, and when we export the model into IFC and IFC files, as I said, BEXEL Manager is IFC certified, so you can be sure that all informations that are stored within the model and IFC files are available when you import IFC files. And when we talk about big or large-scale models and large-scale project, you probably open multiple IFC files and you append or merge all these files into one model progressively or at the same time. And once opened, all these files can be updated later. And all these updated information also be available and and all the information shall be stored in the model. So if you want to see the sources, different sources of the model which came from our Turing tool, you can also see that here in a tool called sources. And here you see that actually this model came from the Revit from 3 different sources. The first one, architecture, second one, MEP, and the third one, structural source. So you can select entire source here, and the model elements which came from this model are actually selected, and you can easily isolate these and continue additional model analysis for these. Okay. And the next really convenient feature when we talk about model analysis and model exploration is actually the breakdown structure of these elements. Here you saw in a Building Explorer the system-based and default breakdown structure of elements, but actually you can use and create custom breakdowns. And this is really cool feature. So it actually is rule-based breakdown, and it's a combination of any entity inside of the model. And by that, we actually mean category, spatial structure, work set, family name, or a combination of any other custom property that exists in your model. So if, for example, here, you have a different predefined custom breakdowns in your demo model, and this one is actually predefined custom breakdown according to the phase, different phase of these elements. And while selecting the elements showed in a breakdown, all these elements are actually selected automatically in the model. And this actually breakdown is created according to the phase property, which all of these elements have. I'm going to show it this here. So actually, all these elements have the phase 1 property. If we start to edit the way that the actually custom breakdown is created, you see all these elements are actually grouped by construction sequence property. It's textual property, and it's phase 1. And here, for example, you have various different custom breakdowns. This one is really convenient. It's interior wall finish custom breakdown, and you see different levels of the custom breakdown. First one actually here has only one level. It's property phase 1, 2, 3. And this one have 2 levels of custom breakdown. And the first level is actually elevation or levels. And the next one is the area of elements. And here I'm going to show you how this custom breakdown is created. If you go to the edit, you see interior wall finished. When we reset the tree, we see that the elements are actually breakdown by building level or the elevation of the elements, and by the property area by these elements. And if we access to this actually rule, we see that we created different breakdown for the elements smaller than 10 square meters, elements between 10 and 30 square meters, and the elements bigger than 30 square meters. So I'm gonna just add another one, for example, 20 square meters, and for example, 50 square meters. So you see automatically added different custom breakdown properties. So when we hit OK, and OK again, you see that the breakdown structure is automatically refreshed. And here we have as a help for a custom breakdown, we have actually dedicated color-coded views. And when we go to the color-coded view for custom breakdowns, you see the color-coded, differently color-coded elements, which represent the different, in this case, the different areas, the elements which have different areas according to the custom breakdown. You see, this is actually a great tool for a model exploration and model check. And when we hit this little button here, we can isolate and only see the elements which are actually involved in a custom breakdown. This is really a unique and great tool. And if you want to see another custom breakdown we already made, these are actually for master format, materials, rooms, different custom breakdown rules. And I'm gonna just show you the way how you do it. Just this brief example how you do it from the start. We're gonna create new blank custom breakdown. We're going to call it test breakdown. And we're going to select all, for example, all categories of walls. And when we use selection, you see 629 walls in the model existing. So we're going to create, let's say, breakdown according to the elevation of these walls. So we're going to use right-click right here, right-click, add rule, building level. This is the first level according to the elevation of our elements. And then we're going to create additional rule, for example, for a family name. And then, for example, for additional discrete property, which actually means for any property that element have within information within itself, which came from the authoring tool, and let's say uniformat, because I know that all these elements have uniformat property. And now when we hit OK, you're going to see the custom-made breakdown according for all walls in our models, grouped by level, family, and then uniformat property. And if we want to apply some coloring, we can click this button here, and this means that the coloring will be applied to the uniformat property. So here you see all walls differently color-coded according to the uniformat property, and when we expand all these, you see entire custom breakdown structure according to some specific property that we actually created. So I'm gonna show all elements again and go back to 3D view, because since we're talking about properties and the custom breakdown of these elements according to the properties, the main feature and the main tool for accessing and exploring the properties of these elements is actually this window here, properties. And when you select any of the elements in your model, whether you select it manually by selecting these elements, or when you select the elements by selecting these elements on your custom breakdown or by building Explorer, doesn't matter. All these elements are selected, and the properties for each of these elements are shown here. Since I actually selected entire model, you see all the categories existing in the model are actually shown here. And if we expand the properties, we see the properties for each of the categories. And when we select just one simple model elements, you see the properties for this specific element, all the properties existing in the model. If you, for some reason, don't see all the properties, here you see, this is a little tip. Here you see the property button. So you can go to options and filters and check all. So this means that you're going to make sure that this window shows you all properties that comes from the authoring tool and which are stored within your model elements. So when we hit OK, you see all the properties came from the authoring tool. And you see, for example, here that we have that uniformat code that we actually used for a custom breakdown that we created here. So additional really great feature is that you can actually access any of these properties, not by clicking on the elements, but actually when you click on the element and select the element, you can select any of the properties that actually element contains. And by selecting these properties here, you can also check all elements that have this property here, so which is actually really convenient. So you see here all category of walls with a different areas or different value of the property, specific property. Actually this process of selecting you can use for any of the properties here. So you can select here any of the categories which contain area property, or the category wall, selected elements, only visible. So for example, I'm going to select several walls that have different areas. And when we hit select, you see all these elements are selected. And you see the properties of any of these. And one additional great tool here is when you select multiple elements, when we go to the, for example, area, you see the summarized area and average area for selected elements. And if you have a different category of the elements, as we had in a previous moment, I'm going to show you this as well. For example, if we have different categories and we want to see, for example, the area of all these. Now we have curtain panels, and then walls, mechanical equipment, walls, roofs. And if we want to see on some easy accessible way the areas of these elements, we can select the property and add it to favorites as a sum. And then this selected area, selected property will be shown in the favorite property window, where we can see only favorite, only property that we added as a favorites. So you can also see the summarized values of specific property. So this is a great tool for quantification of selected elements in your model. And I see, I'm gonna make a brief stop here because I see that already some of you actually have some questions, and please continue to write us any of the questions that you have, and I'm gonna make sure that by the end of this webinar to answer the questions that you have here. I hope that it's okay with you. So when we talk about the quantification and the summarization of the properties of the selected elements, actually we're talking about the quantity takeoffs of these elements and the model itself. And when we're talking about that, the BEXEL Manager as a unique platform has a specific tool for a quantification of these elements, and I'm going to try to show it here. In the lower part of your screen, you see different tools for different modules of our software, and here you see the quantity takeoff tool for a quantification module. And you see already in this demo model already created quantity takeoffs for some specific elements. And you see the quantification performed for these elements. And I'm going to show you how it actually works. When we go to the edit quantity takeoff, you see the window is almost similar as a window for creating the custom breakdowns. So when we hit the reset tree, we see that quantity takeoff structure for this specific quantification is created by elements, selected elements, according to the first level of, let's say, breakdown of this quantification was building level, and then a category of these elements. family or actually family name of these elements. And then, which is different from the custom breakdown, is actually that in the quantification tool, we have a ability to add different quantifications. So the software automatically calculates the sums of specific properties or specified properties for different different quantities of these elements. So here I'm going to show you a brief example how it works. I'm going to create new blank quantity takeoff. For example, you can use two different methods for creating quantity takeoffs. And the first one is from selected elements, and the one is according to the rules, any rule that you provide. And the first one is actually when we select any of the elements, we can create from selected elements, but the best way actually is for performing this analysis is actually from blank quantity takeoff. And now we have more options for selecting and creating a different custom breakdown for quantity takeoff. For example, I'm going to select only structural columns because I need to know the quantity of the structural columns. And we use selection. You see 203 elements are actually selected. And we're going to break down all these structural columns according to the building level and according to the, for example, family or actually family name. And we're going to provide the different quantities for these elements, which are actually volume. You can use this filter tool. When you type, you can use this filter tool and select only property volume because you see all the available properties here in the window when we don't use the filter tool, which is actually great. Volume and, for example, the length of these elements, and the additional one account for these. And we're gonna color code these elements according to the family name. So this is for a structural column. And when we hit OK, you see created quantity takeoff for our structural columns based on elevation or actually the level, and then according to the family name. And you see the quantities for any of these. And the great additional tool here is when you select actually this arrow here and click auto select from takeoff. When you check this one, while we selecting these quantity takeoffs here, the elements are actually automatically selected in the model. I'm going to show it right now. Isolate selected elements, and you see only structural columns actually within this custom breakdown and the quantity takeoff. And when we select, you see all these elements selected. And the great additional option here is that you actually can export quantity takeoffs as the Excel sheets. And I'm going to show you additional great tool for actually visually appealing quantity takeoff, which can be really helpful on construction sites. When we go to the 3D color-coded view again and switch this one view mode from custom breakdown, which we already used when we talk about custom breakdowns, if we switch it to quantity takeoffs, you see different color-coded elements according to the quantity takeoff now. Okay, and when we show all elements, you see all these elements are actually visible, while the rest of the elements which are not included in the quantification are dimmed. And the tool that I actually mentioned a few minutes ago is actually export. And when we hit styled report, and for example, uncheck fit elements to the bounds, when we export this quantity takeoff, you're going to see which kind of the report we're going to get. Okay. So this is structural columns quantity takeoff. And you see different sheets in our quantity takeoff Excel sheet. This first one is tile report, which actually includes all these elements visible, actually presented, graphically presented on your screen with all these quantity properties that we actually provided when we created our quantity takeoff. Additionally, you have a flat table with all elements, a breakdown structure, which is the similar as the breakdown structure in the software itself. So you see it here, almost similar. And you have a breakdown structure by elements and their ID. So this is really great for a great tool for quantification. And when I mentioned the IDs of the elements, let's say a tip for selecting the elements and selecting the same elements in the authoring tool is actually using their unique IDs. So when you select any of the elements in the BEXEL Manager model, you can use this tool here, selection, copy source ID, and you see the software automatically copies the IDs, source IDs of these elements. And when you go back to the Revit or any authoring tool, which actually created the model, you can use these IDs to select these elements, the same elements in authoring tool. So this is some kind of help for B model checking and let's say help for the design process when you can check if these elements are actually correct in the BEXEL Manager F, and if you see some issues, you can select these elements and select them again using source IDs in authoring tool and change design. And when we talking about selections and selecting the elements, the additional great feature of BEXEL Manager is actually creating specific selection sets of groups of the elements. I'm gonna go back to show these all elements in the BEXEL Manager viewer, 3D view. And on the left side here, you see selection sets, which is actually additional way of breakdown or grouping the elements according to manual selection, or which more important is grouping according to specific rule. And this tool actually is used for creating automatically grouped elements according to their properties. In this demo model, you see almost all elements are actually automatically grouped according to the uniformat property that they have. If we go to the properties, you see all elements have some uniformat, master format, and construction sequence property, which we vastly used in this demo model. And all these selection sets are actually created rule-based. And what that means, it actually means that if we go to the edit of any of these groups or selection sets, you see that group is actually created according to the rule uniformat. So actually any of the element that actually have uniformat property equal to B1010 210 is actually automatically stored within this group. And I'm gonna show how it works right now. For example, if we want to create additional smart, we call this this sort of selection set, which are rule-based smart selection set. We're gonna hit new selection set, call it, for example, let's say floors or structural slabs. And we want to automatically include only structural slabs on the level 2, for example. And how we're going to do that? We're going to do that by using specific rules. In this case, we're going to use category. First we're going to use category rules for selecting slabs, or actually floors. Yeah, slabs. And you see automatically selected 149 elements. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to just go back because I already have 24 previously selected elements, which are these. And I'm gonna hit OK again, new rule, inclusive structural slabs. Yeah, you see 149 elements included, structural slabs, and we said that we want only slabs that actually are structural, concrete slabs on the level 2. And how we're going to do that? We're going to use additional rules, and we're going to use intersect rule in this case, and we're going to select all structural. Since we actually created this model, I know that all structural elements here have a their name actually starts with ST. So I'm going to use element query rule for a name, family name. And I'm going to say that all actually slabs that starts with ST. And now you see that model elements that we have in the model that starts with ST, we have 900 to 956, and intersection of slabs and these elements are actually 29. So 29 structural slabs. And for level 2, we can use additional rule in intersect rule for a building story. And we're going to say just the slabs on the second floor. And now you see only 8 elements. So when we hit OK, you see if I hide all these elements, you see structural slabs on level 2. So this one is really, really great tool for selecting automatically selected elements. And when you create all these selection sets, smart selection set, when you update the elements coming from the authoring tool, all these new elements or edited elements will be automatically stored within specific smart selection set according to the rule that you provided. And as you see on this demo model that we have, almost all these selection sets are actually created by specific rule. So if you change the model in the authoring tool, all the elements which have to be assigned to specific selection set will be automatically, let's say, grouped within this selection set. And the additional tool which I'm gonna briefly show here is actually clash detection tool. This is the actually standardized tool for clash detection of your model and checking the design issues within your model. For example, if we go to expand these jobs here in the demo model, you see different jobs for different criteria, different clash detections. So if we hit structure and MEP, you see all these jobs and issues found between structural and MEP elements. And when we hit any of these, you see the clash detection and clash detection results. And if you want to create additional clash detection job, you can create new job. And here you see the almost all breakdown elements breakdown by any of these previously showed breakdown rules. So for example, if we want to check the structural beams and HVAC, we can use, for example, just work set or selection sets or systems, any of these for run clash detection job. As you probably know from the other similar softwares for clash detection, you see different options for types of the clash: hard, clearance, conservative, and just duplicate elements. So for example, we're going to just try to do a job for clash detection between structural beams and MEP elements. Okay, when we hit run, we see found clash between these specified elements. When we hit OK, you see all these clash detections findings, and you can go to any of these. And additional great tool here when we're talking about clash detection is that our software is actually integrates BCF manager within itself. So you can use this BCF manager tool to actually create new topics for any of the found jobs. For any of the found jobs, for example. And once saved, you can select, actually save these BCF files and send it to the other stakeholders in your project and design team, so they can open this BCF file in the authoring tool, and they're gonna automatically have this specific view that you created in BEXEL Manager while you're checking the possible issues. So this is a really brief explanation of this tool, which is actually a great tool for a design review. Okay, when we go back, I'm going to show you one really specific and unique tool and a module for our software. This is actually cost editor and the cost manager. So in a lower part of your screen, you see the cost editor and the assigned items tools. And actually these tools are actually tools for a cost manager, which is basically the cost estimation tool for incorporated in our software. And the base of the cost estimation in a BEXEL Manager is actually this tool, and it's basically a database integrated within BEXEL Manager software. Main entities within cost base are actually cost classifications. And here in this demo model, you see master format and uniformat classifications already incorporated. And it means that you have a breakdown of cost data according to any standardized or non-standardized format and items. And you see cost items breakdown according uniformat. And if we expand all, you see all items. But what is really great, you can also add or import any classification system as well, not just use these two within demo models. You can use any. And it means that you can use internal cost database of your company, for example, or internal project-wise database, or you can have a classification within contracted cost items or approved cost items, anything depending on needs of a specific project. And all cost units for a different cost items can be changed depending on the contractor needs and the common contracted processes that you actually use. And I'll show you the last level of this cost classification down to the cost item itself. These are actually cost items. And all these actually cost items are accessible and editable. So you can just right-click on any of these and edit cost item definition. So you can change the code of any of these. You can change the price or actually the cost of any of these. And this actually is a storage for all cost items in your project. And when you enter the option of any of these cost items, you can create cost units, actually the cost prices, and you can also incorporate resources for any of these cost items. And these resources can also be specified, and daily output and quantification can be added. And all these are actually forming the cost of your specific items. So this is really great if you're, for example, contractor or subcontractor, and you use all this information. But if you just need the unit price or just price for a specific item, you can do that as well. I'm going to show you how you can create any of the cost items. I'm going to right-click on any of these classification items and create new cost item from, for example, new definition. And as I said, you can use some already created resources to create cost item. But for example, if we are not interested in that, for example, if we're just a project manager of or some cost estimation guy, which actually just uses final unit prices, we can use that as well. We're gonna create only units cost item based on a cost unit, which is actually manually created. Let's say $30 for let's say area of some wall painting. We're creating cost item for a wall painting. And let's say the one area, 1 square meter, is actually $30. And in order to create some rule to automatically assign this cost item to specific elements, we can create the formulas how we're gonna apply this price to the elements. So let's say we're gonna use area. So this formula here, actually when we click area, and hit OK, you see that the formula for calculating the cost of our project or the elements are this cost on area of specific elements. And for example, if we want to automatically assign this cost item to specific walls, we can also use the queries. And it's a similar tool and the system for creating the quantity takeoffs or custom breakdowns. So we can use any rule that element have and assign this specific cost item to elements containing specific rules. So for example, in this case, we're going to use walls, category wall. And the additional tool will be a family name that actually starts with AR, which are actually architectural walls. And now you see that the cost item is created. And when we hit OK, we're gonna put description. And we want to search this one. Okay, wall paint, wall paint. This one here is actually created, and when we try to assign this one automatically, we can do that by selecting the elements manually or automatically auto-assign cost items. And when we hit OK, you see that this actually cost item is automatically assigned based on the rules that we actually created here in element query. And when we go to the assigned items and filter by element selection, actually, we're going to search wall paint. Expand all. You see that these are actually applied to specific walls. And all these actually cost items came within demo model are actually provided and applied according to specific query, and in this case it's uniformat. And when I told you that you can import or export any of these cost database, you can do that by just exporting tool, and you can export entire table. And when we open this one, it looks similar as this actually view here. You see all these description and the items and the rules for assigning these elements. You have a help here within the file, so you can use this and create your own. And in the same way, you can import the same table or different classification systems. Okay, and once we applied the cost for entire project, the next, let's say, the next dimension of BIM is to create schedule and simulation of the construction of our model. And for this specific needs, our software is really, really great, and it has a unique module for scheduling and scheduling tools, which are actually here. It's schedule editor. And the scheduling method within our software is really great. It's actually visionary and advanced, and it allows you to express your planning expertise in a most natural way. It helps you automatically create schedule, and everything is rule-based. I'll try to explain here in a few brief steps. In the schedule editor, you see Gantt chart, but you can also see the line of balance and the logic, and these are just the different presentation of your schedule. The basic, let's say the basic tool for work with the schedules is import or export schedules from Primavera or MS Project. And this is really basic, and almost all different scheduling software have the same options. But what is unique and what is great in BEXEL Manager is that you can automatically create entire schedule and the schedule methodology using this tool here, schedule, and the methodologies. So I'm going to show you how this specific schedule is created. It's created using methodologies. And when you click the methodology editor, you see entire methodology based on the cost items. As you see, these are actually the cost items that we also already presented in the cost editor. And all these are actually already assigned to specific model elements according to the unit format property. Okay, and you see all these items and the tasks are actually interlinked and connected using the commonly used types of connection, and this can be also changed and edited using start, 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 finish, 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 start. And we can also use some lags for the specific works. So this is one of the steps for creating the schedule. Additional is using zone editor. And this one is actually the similar, creating the methods or the analogy of the planning process, but not just using the items, cost items, but using any of the provided groups that you already created within the BEXEL Manager. And by that, I mean you can use any of the smart selection sets, any of the work sets, any of the levels that already have created in the model, and you can use them for creating specific methodologies. And in this case, we have a construction sequence. For example, we used smart selection set phase 1, 2, 3 for creating different phases of the schedule, phase 1, 2, 3, and we actually specified the links of these phases, and then we used the main types of works, which are actually the commonly used type of work: site preparation, substructure, superstructure, external facade, and fixtures. And you can use these, you can change the links, you can add some links, delete. This is also available and doable. And the next level for the creation of this schedule is actually the elevation. So the software used the elevations and the, let's say, physical position of these elements in the respective level to create level of the schedule. So how it actually works, let's say we want to create a new schedule. And you see already created schedule. And now the great and really advanced tool for creating the schedule automatically is to create automatically entire schedule using already explained methodologies for creating. So how are we going to use that? Right click, new task, creation wizard. And now we're going to create entire schedule using template. We're going to load the template 1, for example, and this one is already created. And I'm going to hit OK. So you see entire schedule automatically created. OK, and all activities are actually existing, and all connections and the links and durations are existing. And this created schedule you can use, change, edit. You can select any of these items. You can change it manually, or you can actually access to the properties of any of these tasks. You can do that by clicking Task Editor or Task Editor here, right click. And you can change relations, rules, cost, quantities, resources, activities, any other settings, visibility settings for any of these, for these activities. And which is what is extraordinary in all this process. All these activities are actually created rule-based, and they're immediately linked with the model elements. So if, for example, I select any of activities and select elements, you see already selected elements which are assigned to specific task. And when we hit update button, OK, and go to the schedule viewer, go to the schedule animation. When we hit play, you see our schedule animation. And for example, I know that this, let's say, ground have to be visible from the start. I'm going to select the ground, go to the schedule viewer, and add selected elements to neutral. And you see all these elements. And you have some additional options for your schedule view. You can click options, change duration of your animation, change the type or interval, how you're gonna show these elements. I'm gonna change it to hourly. For example, if we want to see how the elements progressively on hour basis. And I'm gonna just create some more animation cameras so you can see, let's say, more visually appealing this animation. I'm gonna create new animation. Okay. And I'm gonna put my first camera here. And when we get to some specific point of or date on our calendar, I'm gonna create new one. And when I hit play, now you see all these elements are actually virtually constructing while the camera orbiting around it. And you can export these simulation as a videos or sets of images, and also created schedule can also be exported. Okay, export. And when we created our schedule, this one was actually custom based, but I can show you how to do it from the start. For example, if you don't know how to create creation template, I'm gonna show you that really briefly. I'm gonna create new, and I'm gonna create template from these editors and methodologies that we have already. I'm gonna create new template, temp 1, and we're gonna create reference children based from zone items. and I'm going to use levels, or actually a main type of works, and then levels. And then I'm gonna use the main type of works, levels, and that's it, for example, for now. Or we can use some additional smart selection set, for example, types of works. Okay, and when we create additional schedule, using our different template, temp1, so we're gonna have only main type of works and levels. You see how it's created. And also all these tasks and activities are interlinked. So you can actually create templates, and you can share these templates between different projects, because the commonly used planning processes are almost the same for a same typical buildings. For example, you have almost the same methodology for hospitals and for stadiums or sport venues, and for different housing buildings. These actually methodologies are almost similar, and you just change the specific activities, and you have only maybe more or less levels or different elevations for these buildings, but the main methodology and the planning system is almost the same. And once when we have created or actually schedule animation, you can use that schedule for assigning the cost that we also created using cost editor, and assigning items. So if we go back to the schedule editor and use sample schedule from your demo model, we can click on edit and assign any of previously assigned costs. So we're going to use this one, originally came from the demo model, and we hit OK and update. When I go to the scenes and actually schedule animation and hit play, you see the cost. It changes while the construction goes. And just for a brief moment, I'm going to stop it and go back to the schedule editor. You can check actually the resources and the cost during the construction using task report. And you see cost, graphics for cost, cumulative cost, equipment, and activity of all these activities within your schedule. And you can assign for a specific month. You can export these to Excel and save to image. So this is a briefly, let's say, introduction with the features and the possibilities of the software. So now I'm gonna just briefly show you the prices and inform you about the prices of our software. Okay. As regarding prices and licenses, as you see, there's an annual standalone license and a floating license. And if you're interested in our project, you can contact local resellers, or you can contact us directly. But as you see, these are the prices for the BEXEL Manager. And the prices can be differently according to the taxes of specific country, but anyway, you can contact us for more information. Also, you can request the trial on BEXEL Manager site using the trial request, and you can use standard trial or educational license. I'm not sure if you could see the prices. These are the prices. BEXEL Manager full license is 2,400 euros annually, and the BEXEL Manager floating license is 4,400 euros also annually, and the BEXEL Engineer is 1,200 euros. And if you actually are interested, you can request for a trial, standard trial, or educational trial, which is actually free for 1 year. And also as additional source of information and tutorials about our software, you can go to the YouTube page of BEXEL Consulting, and you see the playlist called BEXEL Manager Education, where you have a bunch of already created tutorials for different specific tools of our software. And I'm not really sure if you had some more questions which I would like to answer right now. I saw that you asked about the language of our software. Actually, currently there is only version in English, but the user manuals and training videos in several languages. So as you saw, the presented tutorials are subtitled, and you also have a German language for a subtitle for these tutorials. And also our software supports different local classification structures. So it means that you can import any cost classification. It doesn't matter which language or which unit it is. So if you don't have any more questions, I want to thank you one more time for your time and for your attendance, and feel free to send us additional questions if you have, and also check our social media networks, and stay tuned for next BEXEL Manager webinars. Thank you again, and look forward to meet you again.